Hello and welcome to the final installment of Netflix Sandman Season 1. I did hear the second season has been greenlit to be made, but with the current writers' strike, it will not be for a while. If you have not realized it by now, I think the show is absolute rubbish. However, when the second season is released, I will review it for you, so you do not have to slog through the woke dreck. As always, if you missed any of the previous installments, I will have a playlist link to all of the previous installments down below. With that said, let us begin. Episode 11A, A Dream of 1,000 Cats. This bonus episode tells two tales from the Dream Country run. Both stories were one-off standalone stories in the comic. This episode is animated, and it is the most accurate episode compared to the source material. I will offer a very brief summary, as the details are not very relevant to the story. A house kitten is guided by a stray to listen to a Siamese cat tell her story. The Siamese cat's story is about her life. Beginning with living with a human couple, and seeing a stray tomcat, she eventually mates with the stray and births a litter. Happy at being a mother, the human man takes all of the kittens and tosses it into the lake because they are not purebred. The Siamese cat mourns feeling the loss of her kittens, and prays to wake up in the dreaming. She is directed to meet the dream cat, and after a long and arduous trek, she meets him and she asks why life is the way that it is. Morpheus shows her that cats once were the rulers of the land, and humans were their servants and playthings, until one human had a dream. That human told other humans his dream, and his story was passed on, until one day, enough humans dreamed the same dream, and the world changed as we know it to be today. The cat asked Morpheus if the humans dreamed life as it is now, and he says no. Humans dreamed that life has always been like this since the beginning. He asks the cat if she understands, and she says yes, and she knows what needs to be done. The cat then left her human caretakers and began walking the land telling her tale as she does this night. Finished with her story, the kitten tells her that she believes it, and the Siamese tells her that there is still hope. On their way back home, the kitten and the stray talk about her story, and the stray says how hard it would be to have 1,000 cats dream the same dream. Back in the house, the humans see the kitten sleeping as it dreams of eating small humans. This concludes episode 11A. There is not much to say about this episode since it is very accurate to the source material. The one thing I would like to point out is the tomcat that catches the Siamese's eye. In her story, she describes him as ragged of ear, dark of eye. He was strong and fast, and his claws and teeth were sharp as winter. Yes, she is describing another cat, but what is conveyed from her description? It is as clear as a cloudless day that the tomcat is masculine, and more feral than domesticated. In essence, the tomcat oozes alpha male qualities. When you put the tomcat against Netflix Morpheus, it is like comparing a crab fisherman to a gender studies professor. The difference is night and day. If you are a straight woman, ask yourself, which one do you find attractive? The blue-collar, rough-hands man earning a paycheck, or the wokeified wimp, with a useless PhD, and a huge student loan bill? That is the difference in comparing source material Sandman with Netflix Sandman. Overall, the story is fine. It is interesting to hear a tale told from a different perspective other than our own, while at the same time showing us what the potential a dream has. It is a nice little tale. This concludes the review of episode 11A. Episode 11B. Calliope. We see Richard Maddock, author and professor, giving a lecture about writing. We learn he has published a bestseller, and is slated to write a follow-up, but he is suffering from a massive case of writer's block. A medical student comes up to him after his lecture and gives him a bezoar, which is a ball of hair that was consumed by a person. That night, he visits an old writer, Erasmus Fry, and he invites him in. He asks him if he has what he wants, and Richard gives him the bezoar. Erasmus tells Richard that it is told that a bezoar contains mystical properties to cure poisons and sickness, but Richard is uninterested. They go upstairs and Erasmus tells the tale of how he caught one of the muses in Greece using sorcerer's garlic. He opens a locked storeroom, and inside is the Greek muse, Calliope. She greets them both with disdain, and Erasmus introduces Richard to her, and tells her he is giving her to him. Calliope tells Erasmus that he promised to free her before he died, and in a nutshell, he says he lied. Richard reluctantly accepts her, and they go back to his home. In the bedroom he designates for her, Calliope asks him to let her go, and all he must do is just say so. Richard says he will and bargains with her to help him first. She says free her first, and he says no and locks her in the bedroom. At his computer, he is unable to write anything, and unable to do anything productive. The next day, he presents Calliope with material gifts, which does not impress her at all. She tells him that an artist prays to the muses for the gift of divine inspiration. He tells her that she gave it to Erasmus Fry, and she says no. He took it against her will. She tells him the story of how Erasmus captured her, and he tells her the predicament he is in. He received an advance for his second book 2 years ago, and has not written a single word, nor does he have a single idea. He pleads to her once again, and she tells him to ask him when she is free. Again, he sits in front of his computer unable to write, and receives a call from his agent. He tells Richard if he does not have something he can present to the publisher soon, they will demand their advance back from him, he will no longer be his agent. After the phone call, he visits Calliope's room and rapes her, taking the divine inspiration by force and against her will. After his session, he writes on his computer at will, as Calliope prays to the Kamani. Clearly, Richard is despicable, so why present all of this non-source material back and forth? Does it make him more despicable pleading first and then raping her? I don't think so. Perhaps they were trying to fill the time to pad the runtime. If that was true, I think they should have used it to make it 100% clear Richard is an absolute prick. Anyway, Calliope's prayers are answered, and we see it is the same 3 ladies that were the 3 fates. She pleads for their help, but they cannot as she has been lawfully bound. They tell her that many gods have died, but the endless may be able to help. They tell that Calliope and Morpheus had a previous relationship, and she bore his son Orpheus. Yet, what happened to him caused their relationship to fall out of grace. She says she would not ask for his help, and the ladies tell her that he could not even if he could, as he is currently imprisoned by Roderick Burgess. As the ladies leave, they give their sympathies and farewells, and leave her in the room alone. Some time has passed, and we see Richard hosting a party as his second book was a big success. He sits down talking about his main character. Who do you think his main character is?
Rising to the top, push it to the edge, give it all you got, barely break a sweat, strong world!
In my opinion, it is this type of dialogue that makes him look like a self-centered, virtue-signaling douchebag, but since the show is woke, I believe the showrunners are thinking it is the exact opposite. Perhaps it serves both sides well, as I do despise Richard that much more. Again, some time has passed, and Richard, now Rick, has written another successful book and shows Calliope. The book has been optioned to be made into a movie, and as he takes a phone call, she sees a headline on a newspaper that a person in a long slumber has woken up. As Rick talks on the phone, he states that at least 50% of the cast and crew must be made up of women or persons of color. Clearly this is not Rick talking, as it is not in the source material, and it is the showrunners talking in his place. Once again, it works both ways in making him look like a virtue-signaling douchebag. In this case, I do believe the showrunners are saying this overtly, but actually mean it when we look at the woke casting of this show. Of course, Martin Luther King Jr. fought for equal rights, and his "I had a dream" speech is iconic to say the least, yet his words now fall on deaf ears, as the woke folk actively fight for color of skin over content of character every fucking time. What an absolute fucking joke. Anyway, Calliope sneaks downstairs while Rick is on the phone. He writes the name Morpheus on a piece of paper, when Rick catches her and he reads the name aloud. He asks her what it means, and she tells him he is the Lord of Dreams. Rick tears up the paper and throws it in the fireplace, telling her she is his by law. Next we see another race-swapped character interviewing him. I'm sorry, I've lost count of how many race-swapped characters there have been. He learns that Erasmus Fry has passed away, and he died by poisoning himself. In Calliope's bedroom, Morpheus arrives, and they both lament about their imprisonment. Instead of summarizing this, let me just show you this exchange in its entirety.
Inspire him to let me go?
I will do all that, and more.
Dream.
He must be punished.
How? What punishment could be enough? Even his death would not bring back what he has taken from me. He's nothing. He's just a man.
I cannot allow him to go free.
Why? Because I was once yours.
Because he hurt you. The last time I saw you, you said you would never speak to me again.
I'm sorry. I did not know where else to turn.
You misunderstand me. When I heard you call to me, even after all this time, let me help you. Please. I owe you that much.
What will you do to him?
Now here is the source material version of the exchange. It reads, Calliope. Oh, it's you. They told me you had been imprisoned just like me. Morpheus, they spoke the truth. I was imprisoned. But, as you can see, I am now free. Calliope. Then please. By the love I once had for you, by whatever you felt for me. Please. Make him give me my freedom. Make him let me go. That is it. Short and to the point. But you might think they need to pad the runtime once again, and that might be true. However, do you see the change? In the source material, Calliope pleads to Morpheus to help her gain her freedom. In the show, Morpheus begs Calliope to allow him to help her. Can you see the overt beta male characterization of Morpheus? Once again, this is fucking 100% unacceptable. Anyway, Rick comes home and finds Morpheus sitting at his desk. He demands Rick to release Calliope, and he says no. Rick says she needs the ideas she provides to him and cannot let her go. Morpheus says he will provide ideas to him in abundance, and Rick wakes up on the floor. He runs up to Calliope's room and asks what did she do to him. She says she hasn't done anything to him, but he has met Morpheus. That night, Rick gives a book reading of his latest novel. He asks for questions, and is asked where his ideas come from. He says they are all around us and gives an example of one, and then gives another example when he sees Morpheus standing in the back of the hall. The ideas spout from his mouth, constantly unable to stop. The medical student that gave him the Bezoar finds him in the stairwell, and sees ideas written in blood on the wall. He gives her his keys and tells her to go to his home and open the locked bedroom upstairs, and tell the woman she is free. As she enters the room, she finds it empty except for a book by Erasmus Fry. As the woman leaves, Calliope and Morpheus are downstairs. She thanks him for freeing her. And he asks what she will do now. She says to prevent her imprisonment from ever happening again by inspiring humanity to want better for themselves. Such bullshit. Of course she does not say this in the source material, as she is just virtue signaling like her despicable captor now. If this show is trying to inspire humanity to want better for themselves, then why don't they hire the best actors for the part, rather than hiring such unattractive and talentless actors just because of their skin color? Fuck this preachy bullshit. Anyway, she asks Morpheus to release Rick from his affliction, and Morpheus does so. Rick is at hospital, and he feels the ideas fade from his head until they are all gone. Finally, I want to play you this final exchange.
May I visit you in the dream realm sometime? So that we may finally talk about our son? And grieve him properly?
One day. Perhaps, but
I understand. Thank you, Oneros. I will not forget this. Fare you well. Fortune be with you.
goodbye, Calliope.
Now here is the source material version. Calliope, maybe I could visit you in the dream world. It would be nice to see you again properly. What do you think? Morpheus, I do not think that would be a good idea, Calliope. Calliope, no, perhaps it wouldn't. Thank you anyways, Aneris. I will not forget this. Fare you well, Aneris. Fortune go with you. Morpheus. Goodbye, Calliope. That's it. Once again, the beta male Netflix Sandman is absolutely fucking insufferable. Morpheus is not scatterbrained, nor is he ever overly emotional. His replies are always curt and decisive. Okay, this ends the review of episode 11b. Now let me add some thoughts to this episode. Let me show the beginning of the episode when Richard Maddock is lecturing about writing.
Character has to come first. Everything else follows. Every plot twist, every line of dialogue, every fraught, meaningful silence.
According to Richard Maddock, character comes before everything else. If that is true, and this show is supposed to be an adaptation of the source material, then why the fuck is Morpheus portrayed as a fucking beta male? If the character is not a fucking beta male, and the show portrays him as such, then clearly character does not come first. Rather, a woke narrative comes first, and if that means turning your title character into an impotent bitch, then so be it.
God damn it!
Fuck this shit, and fuck this episode. I have said enough, so let us grade it. Episode 11A without source material, it gets a 6. It is a tale told, but there is not much drama at all, and although short, it is still slow in the pacing. With the source material, it is a 6 as well. It is accurate, but the same issues apply from above as well. Episode 11B without source material, it gets a 4. The race swapping is rampant in this episode. It is blatant to the point of being annoying, and takes you out of the actual story being told. Of course, the overt virtue signaling is pure cringe as well. With the source material, it gets a 1. Beta male Morpheus is, and always will be annoying as fuck. And will always be 100% unacceptable. This concludes the review of episode 11. Before I begin the overall series review, a few other things about the previous episode has sprung to mind. The character of Rick Maddock. They show him as trying to be a good person, but he is a rapist, a liar, and a kidnapper. All bad things. However, the woke folk praise him for writing strong female characters, and his forced diversity hiring over merit. So what is the show trying to say exactly? That we do not see him raping Calliope, but it is implied enough. So is the show saying he is a good person that does bad things out of dire necessity, or is he a bad person through and through? In the source material, Rick is a narcissistic asshole. In this show, he is a narcissistic asshole with a woke attitude. So what is the show trying to do? Perhaps they are trying to add a layer to his character, which is good. However, ask yourself. In the end, do you despise the character, or feel sorry for him? I will leave it at that. Now, let us discuss the series as a whole. Clearly, the show failed in characterization. Every white male character was diminished in some way, and every woman was given a wide berth to activate girl boss mode. Of course, all the race-swapped black characters had increased importance, even when they were irrelevant to the story as a whole. Here is a tier list of the characters in terms of accuracy. As you can see, Rose and Jed are both at the bottom of the barrel. Jed should have barely had any interaction to the story. He is a MacGuffin, and that is what they should have made him. Not only is the actor portraying Rose absolutely rubbish, but the script does her no favors allowing her to go girl boss mode, while having the most incredible luck imaginable. Of course, the insufferable and disloyal mutinous minions of the Dreaming, Matthew, Merv and Lucian populate the F tier as well. Although Morpheus has existed since the dawn of time, these motherfuckers have more wisdom and foresight than their creator. Finally, of course, the Lord of the Dreaming, Morpheus, must be placed in the F tier. The title character is no beta male, and yet the show leads us to believe this right from the first episode. Absolutely fucking 100% unacceptable. I see you looking at the A tier. Yes, Hobgadling was portrayed correctly, and yes, Desire was portrayed accurately as well. Then you look at the middle of the pack. Other characters that hurt the show are obviously Joanna Constantine, John Dee, Lucifer, and the Corinthian. The Corinthian is more of a story issue, making him a centralized antagonist through both story arcs, which is not source material. The introduction and the insertion of him ruins the characters of others, like Roderick Burgess and even John Dee. Lucifer is horrible. Casting does nothing for me. Acting is weak as well. Story changes shows Lucifer making stupid choices. That is 100% unacceptable. John Dee is overall much blander. They fail to show him as a psychopath and a villain. His ride and conversation with race-swapped Rosemary was not only bland, but a clear missed opportunity in showing what a psycho he is. Instead, they use it to bitch about the patriarchy and show Rosemary a victim of it while being a girl boss and raising her kids on her own, and still being kind enough to give a ride to a white man in his pajamas right outside of a mental institution. Seriously, did all of the showrunners and producers not second-guess any of that? Also, why does he kill Rosemary in the source material, and give her the protection amulet in the show? Black privilege along with white guilt, I presume. Such bullshit. And giving his battle with Morpheus only 10 minutes of screen time does not help him either. Lastly, let us discuss the impossible girl with the rubbish scouse or Cockney accent, and the nondescript wardrobe. Not once did John Constantine try to alpha male Morpheus. The closest is when he pleaded hard to not leave his girlfriend to waste away. Yet, in this show, how many times did Joanna Constantine activate girl boss mode? Telling Morpheus to wait, or telling him he needs to be looked after. Piss off Clara. Also, guess who one of the directors of the show's girlfriend is? That's right. The impossible girl herself. Cronyism confirmed. And the showrunners had the audacity to say she was perfect for the role. Now let us discuss the race-swapped characters. If the characters are race-swapped, but does not affect the story, then it is not an issue. For example, Franklin in episode 6. He is race-swapped, and being his character is so minor to the story, it is irrelevant. On the other hand, there are characters that are race-swapped that should still be irrelevant, but the portrayal of the character is altered from the source material. For example, the aforementioned Rosemary. The first question is why? Can the character be portrayed as a black woman? Yes. So why change her from the source material? A character from getting killed by John D. to being thanked and given the protection amulet is a drastic contrast or each other. And what are the differences between the two? One is white and one is black. It is simple common sense to infer the change was due to the race swapping, and that is pandering at the expense of quality writing. Absolutely fucking unacceptable. Let us look at Paul the groundskeeper. I don't care that he and Alex Burgess are gay lovers. What does not make sense is Alex, now being the head of his father's estate, would take a black lover in the 50s at the expense of the estate's reputation. Also, when he takes Paul to see Morpheus, Paul tells Alex to tell him that he means it when he states his offer. What is that supposed to mean? Because the offer is reiterated and endorsed by a black person, it now be taken as sincere? Such bullshit.
How dare you!
Shut up!
And of course the breaking of the seal. For him to notice it, acknowledge it to Morpheus, and do nothing allowing Morpheus to be freed is pure bullshit. As I said in the episode 1 review, for him to do this, condemns his lover to a life of suffering. Also, for him to not free Morpheus after decades have passed makes him equally guilty, and yet he receives no repercussions for his complicity, and yet the show wants us to believe he is morally righteous. Such pandering bullshit. Let us discuss Astra, the black and white daughter in the episode 3. How predictable was it that her white father is the indirect cause to her death? The direct cause was due to Astra's own stupidity, which then is supposed to be the cause of Joanna's reoccurring nightmare. That is just poor writing through and through. Let us briefly discuss Mazikeen. She is a Lilam. A child of Adam and Lilith. Can she be black? I guess so, but in the source material, Mazikeen is portrayed as white, so yes, she is a race-swapped character. Of course the main issue I have with her is the girl boss mode. Her throwing Corazon off the balcony is not source material, but you probably gathered that by now. Instead, the show fails to show us agony and ecstasy dragging Corazon down with them. Now let us discuss Unity Kincaid. The person that lived to the ripe old age of 117 years old. Apparently, her family was well off living in London back in 1916. Apparently, they were sugar plantation owners. There are no sugar plantations in England. Sugar all came from the Caribbean islands, and the plantation owners would have been living on the island, and not in England. So making Unity black makes no sense, but they did so, because they wanted to make Rose Walker black too. Also, given how horrible the actors that they picked for Rose and Jed Walker were, it is clear the best actors was not chosen, but rather they were chosen because of their skin color. Finally, let us talk about Black Death. Nobody cares about Paul, or Rosemary, or Unity Kincaid, or Rose Walker, but they do care about Death. Again, the popularity of Death is equal, and arguably more than Morpheus to some fans. It is not just the portrayal of the character that fans found endearing, but also the look of her. The pale goth girl struck a chord with many people. The show's portrayal is a black woman miming the character. She wears the same clothes, and acts the same way, but she is not goth, and she does not truly act like Morpheus's sister and more like a concerned ex-girlfriend. When it comes to family, love is deep, and family members will not hold back their anger because of the familial bond. This is shown in the source material, and it is even shown in the audiobook. It is horribly conveyed in the show. The actor, the director, the writers, and the showrunners are all at fault here. If the actor cannot read the comic, and gain the sentiment of just how angry Death was at Morpheus, proves that she was not the best person casted for the role. I almost forgot. The worst and the most egregious character of the show regardless of being race and gender swapped is Lucien. We must address Lucien in the show.
Fucking hell.
God damn it!
She is easily the worst character on the show. She is Lucian by name only, while being the fucking lord of the realm by proxy. She is more wise, and more intelligent than her lord and master while being straight up insolent, disobedient and disloyal at the same time. Everything about the character I hate. She is not Morpheus, yet she solves the conundrum of the dream vortex for him. She creates Matthew, and all the minions look to her before turning to Morpheus for assistance.
This is bullshit.
Let me highlight this scene from the egregious episode 7. As you can see, Lucian is reading a book without her glasses. What the fuck? I am a person that wears glasses, and in order to see, I never wear my glasses down on my nose. People that use reading glasses do drop them down on their nose, but apparently Lucian does not need her glasses to read. Thus, they are not reading glasses. So why the fuck does she walk around wearing her glasses like reading glasses, when she does not need them for reading? Only a fucking pretentious douchebag would walk around wearing glasses like reading glasses when they do not need glasses at all. She is an absolute fucking horribly conceived character. And let me say once again, she was race and gender swapped specifically because the show was going to strip all the alpha qualities from Morpheus, and give them to Lucian.
Are you fucking joking?
So what could have been done to make the show better? That is easy. Follow the source material more faithfully. I understand that liberties must be taken, and I am not asking for a 100% pure faithful adaptation. However, there is no reason the show could be faithful to the portrayal of the characters, specifically Morpheus. Giving all of Morpheus's alpha qualities to Lucian is 100% unacceptable, and you lost me at the onset. Right from the beginning, the show makes the statement that it will sacrifice the source material in place of propagating the woke narrative. And whose fault is that? All the producers of the show, including Neil Gaiman. The show is credited to Neil Gaiman, David Goyer, and Alan Heinberg. As we all know, Neil Gaiman is the writer and creator of the Sandman. David Goyer has a history of involvement in comic adaptation as a writer and/or producer in numerous projects like Blade, Nolan's Batman trilogy, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and the Constantine TV show. Alan Heinberg is a TV writer on shows aimed at a female demographic, like Party of Five, Sex and the City, and Gilmore Girls. When it comes to Neil Gaiman, as the creator of the source material, his involvement makes sense, but as the person that created the characterizations of these characters, and to have them drastically changed tells me that having the show get made was more important than having his characters portrayed accurately. Is that selling out? Yes. But can you sell out on something you do not own? No. In contrast, Alan Moore does not own Watchmen. He does not own V for Vendetta. In regards to those movies, the directors and writers tried to be faithful to the source material, and Alan Moore still refused screen credit. Another example is Netflix's adaptation of Cowboy Bebop. The creator and director, Shinichiro Watanabe, does not own the rights and distanced himself from the show after viewing the very beginning of the first episode. Another example is Netflix's adaptation of Avatar, The Last Airbender. They do not own Avatar either. The creators were part of the creative staff, but they dropped off citing creative differences. They also cited a negative and unsupporting environment during their time with the studio. Yes, everybody is different, but being that the creators of the show left because they did not agree with what the studio was pushing them to change the show was more than they could bear, tells me something about the integrity the creators have for their creation, and what the studio is forcing upon them to change. I would say that Alan Moore is an exception and overly stubborn when it comes to the integrity of his works. However, Watanabe and the creators of Avatar were asked to be part of the creative team, and they both turned Netflix down not just for their own integrity, but for the integrity of the show they created. Unfortunately, Neil did not feel the same as these creators.
Disappointed!
Of course, the others credited with developing the show have nothing to lose in creating the show. They get paid regardless of being faithful to the source material, or propagating a woke narrative. In regards to David Goyer, his CV does show many comic book related projects, with his most successful being part of the Nolan Batman trilogy. He did not write the screenplay for any of them, and he is only credited with co-writing the story. The closest thing related to Sandman is his involvement with the Constantine TV show. For the record, I did not like the show. It was too clean. There was no grit. Comparing it to the Keanu Reeves movie, the movie was far superior in characterization even though Matt Ryan looks more like John. As a writer and a showrunner, he has not done anything on his own that I would deem as quality. Alan Heinberg has some ties to comic books, but mainly he is a writer and producer of female demographic TV shows. Him being associated with the show is not necessarily a bad thing. The Sandman did have a large female fan base, but with that said, I read the exact same source material they did, and they liked the same stories I read. There is no reason to change the characterizations to pander to a female demographic if the source material already had a built-in female fanbase. I am not saying he is the cause, they are all the cause including Netflix. I do not know if these three pitched the show to Netflix, or if Netflix approached them. Either way, Netflix demanded changes be made to increase their ESG scores, and the developers capitulated to those demands, unlike Shinichiro Watanabe, or Michael DiMartino and Brian Konietzko. Just to give you some context on how these creators felt, let me give you some excerpts from them. From Brian Konietzko: when Netflix brought me on board to run this series alongside Mike 2 years ago, they made a very public promise to support our vision. Unfortunately, there was no follow-through on that promise. From Michael DiMartino: when Brian and I signed on to the project in 2018, we were hired as executive producers and showrunners. I realized I couldn't control the creative direction of the series, but I could control how I responded. So, I chose to leave the project. From Shinichiro Watanabe: it started with a scene in a casino, which made it very tough for me to continue. I stopped there and so only saw that opening scene. It was clearly not Cowboy Bebop, and I realized that point that if I wasn't involved, it would not be Cowboy Bebop. So as you can see, these creators do not own the rights to their creations, just like Neil Gaiman. Yet these creators, along with Alan Moore, Steve Ditko, and Bill Watterson, have the integrity to walk away from a project, because it would not do justice to their creations. As much as I dislike Saint Greta, her commentary sums my feelings nicely.
And all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you!
Shut up!
Of course, as a fan of the Sandman and Neil Gaiman, I am disappointed. I do not know all of the details that were negotiated between the developers and the studio. Nevertheless, here we are on the other side. The project is complete, and we can clearly see the path taken was the woke path from beginning to end. Morpheus is a beta male. Lucian, as well as a bunch of other characters, were race and gender swapped in order to propagate the woke narrative. None of this is source material. My wishful thinking wants to believe that Neil is saying,
"What have I done?"
and of course compromising his creative integrity by being directly associated with this abomination. I would like to believe he is feeling like this.
All the guilt, the unbearable guilt.
However, in reality, I believe this is his true state of mind. With all joking aside, yes, this show fucking sucks. However, the comic is unblemished, and I still think it is excellent after all these years. I also remain a fan of Neil Gaiman. He is an excellent writer, and although we may disagree with this show to a vast degree, I still believe he is a good person. Assuming for a moment that Neil, or any of the showrunners, watches my review. Also assuming they agree with any critiques. Do I think it would impact how they approach them making season 2? Absolutely not. Clearly, the studio sees the project in increasing their ESG scores, and the showrunners do not care about the faithfulness to the source material as long as the show hits the similar story beats. The characterizations are irrelevant, especially if they are portrayed by white males. So let me put this show to rest. As a whole, I would grade it as a 2. There was a vast amount of potential the show had, and it failed to utilize it by omitting or ignoring plotlines and details. They managed to make a fantasy show so unfantastic and bland, it is like having a cut of aged prime rib and boiling it for dinner. This concludes my review of Netflix Sandman. If you watched all of the installments, thank you for watching this long. I will review other movies and shows as well. So until then, thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe. Have a nice day, and take care.